Okay, alright, I hear you guys. So yesterday, apparently the devs put something out online to do with lore, to do with the story, to do with the most recent patch. Big spoilers will be within. And I have been inundated with comments, tweets, direct messages telling me I need to read this. Apparently it solves some big mystery. Apparently I might hate this. Apparently I might really like it, hate it because it's a big mystery that's been solved and not actually put in game. So we might have a ton to talk about. I don't know what I'm about to experience, so I figured I would read it out for you guys on my first time through, and we'll see what this is. So first of all, on the blog post by the Guild Wars 2 team, January 29th, right here at the end of the month, they say, today we released the first of 3 short stories about the thoughts and feelings of some of your allies in the aftermath of Living World Season 4's 4th episode, All or Nothing. They contain heavy spoilers for the episode. So, let's just break out now. The heavy spoiler being that obviously Aureen's dead. We've done a lot of discussion on the channel about this, you know, methods and mechanics by which she may come back to life, but this is going to affect all the characters in pretty compelling ways. One thing I haven't talked to you guys about on the channel is some people have been wondering what other characters might have died, and on one of the live streams I believe the devs refused to answer directly that question, and many of you have noted that in that big arena obviously Almora was nearby, and then we don't see her at the end, so Almora could be dead as well. I would actually be really bummed out for Almora to have a kind of unceremonious off-screen death, but if it's in service of this big kind of sour beat we're going for now, maybe I'll take that, okay? Anyway, so that was one thing, and I guess we'll get more closure on this. As of right now, as I make this video, this is the furthest in the timeline the story tells, essentially, and we're doing it via blog post lore. Lastly, before we get in, I do also want to remind you all, right as Path of Fire was coming out, I produced a series of videos for you guys. Also on blog post lore, there was that old short story about Kiki and Momo, an Asura that was looking for a cure for her Moa, if I remember correctly, went to Kryta, and there were several chapters to it. I read them all, and then I think the dev that was writing those chapters like left the company or something, and they've never finished it. If the devs are doing this now, and we can see here that this story for today was written by Alex Kane, I would love these devs, if this goes well, to finish the Kiki and Momo stuff, please. Because right now I'm like, oh, are they going to finish whatever the hell's starting here? Anyway, yeah, so Rytlocks' story is today's subject. It was written by Alex Kane of the ArenaNet narrative team, illustrated by creative partner Jeremy Jacinto. So a creative partner, that's like me, right? This is very cool, and formatted using open source program Twine. To read the first story, visit the official page. This is it. So here we go, All or Nothing Requiem Rytlock. What have we got? Now, I've read that blog post. I haven't really gone any further. So it's a special release page. All or Nothing Requiem. Explore the thoughts of your allies following the events of All or Nothing. Explore the thoughts of 3 of your... Okay, so coming soon, Rytlock coming... What the hell is Rytlock's face here? Oh, my lord. That's a very different interpretation of him, isn't it? I'm not trying to be rude about the art here, but follow the thoughts of your 3 allies to read a story. Click on one of the portraits and links. Follow the links to progress. So if this is an interesting video, you guys might see one on the other characters here. This is clearly Kaith. Who's this? Zafira, probably, with the rifle? It's interesting seeing Zafira, such a new character, standing shoulder to shoulder with such established members of Destiny's Edge here. The 2 biggest and most prominent members of Destiny's Edge, to be honest, as the game's been developed to these 2. And then maybe Zafira here as well. Right, so, this series will contain heavy spoilers for Living World Season 4. I'm going to click Rytlock here. Okay, and it's changed this block of text here at the bottom. Okay, so, here we go. I'm gonna scroll in a little bit here for you guys too, since that's a little bit small. Alright, what have we got? I don't know. I'm guessing this is Rytlock. The words hit me like 3 shots to the chest. Those spiked Iron Legion rounds that shatter apart and lodge in your sternum. We stared. Not at the body. At the commander. What was the plan? The next great idea. There was always another plan. This one was supposed to be a triumph. Our killing blow. Burn me. Even prophecy was on our side. And then it was over. Aureen was dead. Dragon's Watch, done. Just like Destiny's Edge. Damn, so it's first-person perspective of Rytlock, right? I like this comparison to the Destiny's Edge failure. I think that was something they really could have emphasized a lot more in the release. Just like the last time, I couldn't stop it. If you guys haven't read Edge of Destiny recently, I would recommend you skip to the end and read the passage of how Kralkatorrik escaped in the past. It's this beautiful piece that essentially talks about the dragon staring at Rytlock through holocaustal eyes. And Rytlock's supposed to stab him with the spear, but Snaff dies in his brain, and the dragon just leaves. And it's so sad as a moment. It was Rytlock going for that killing blow, and Rytlock at the end, in that big crucial moment, that just had to watch the dragon fly off. And he throws the spear, and it just sort of strikes off of Kralkatorrik's shoulder and leaves. So just like that last time, I couldn't stop it. Pretty cool to have here in this story. Right, so anyway. Aurene dead. Kralkatorrik gone. Just gone. Back into the mist with no way to chase him down. A lifetime of Blood Legion training drilled into my head told me to pick up Sohothin and go after the damn dragon anyway. Pursue, destroy, no hesitation, no fear. I could have done more, should have done more. 11 years ago, I watched Glint fall out of the sky. Today, I watch Kralkatorrik murder our last hope. Kaith was there too. Thought she'd feel the same as me. She'd been there the first time. She'd been there when Snaff... I thought she'd be furious. She wasn't. The commander joined her by the twisted corpse that Kralkatorrik left behind, Aurene, impaled, forever frozen in her death throes. I saw tears, but no rage. Where was their rage? Where was the plan? How were we going to win? Kaith, the commander, Timey, Bram, all grieving for the dead dragon. No anger for the one that escaped. How could they mourn a dragon? Oh, okay, so this is an interesting passage. This last line here, how could they mourn a dragon? We did see in the release, he was kind of skeptical of following Aurene and laying all of our hopes in Aurene when she branded that stuff, and we talked about how that might have felt a little bit forced, a little bit out of character. It does seem they're going... I can see it already here, guys. It seems like they're going in that direction that Rytlock's going to, like, fall out with us. That was something I actually speculated they might do. Seemed to make sense. It's not just in terms of where the character is. I think it might be a little bit forced in terms of getting the character right place. But in terms of as a story beat, it makes sense to present to people. I like how they're kind of tapping into his Blood Legion history. They don't talk about that enough. Are they making us think more about Blood Legion because they're planning on a release in the Blood Legion homelands or something? That's also what I'm thinking about as I read this right here at the start. Also, 11 years, guys. I still have this stupid and obviously out of touch default position of always thinking 5 years ago. 5 years is the number. 5. But obviously it was 5 years before launch. We're 6 years later now. 11 years. It's weird. It actually starts to make me think of Rytlock is quite an old, grizzled adventurer now, and maybe Kaith to a certain degree as well. I mean, the Sylvari just getting older and moving into their 30s and stuff is really cool to think about. We haven't had any stories on that. That would probably be a source of comedic release the devs could actually go with at some point with Sylvari. Secondborn hitting 30 years old and feeling, worried about it and stuff. Anyway, this is cool. They're even driving a wedge between him and Kaith. I suspect this is about to go that he goes on his own way. How could they mourn a dragon? You have to trust me, Rytlock. How many times had I heard that from the commander? It was never not a stupid plan. Raising one dragon from birth to kill another and fulfill some foretold destiny? Char don't even raise their own cubs. How is anyone supposed to raise a dragon? It was always a stupid plan, but I went along with it. Not because of trust. No, this was about loyalty. Oh, this is potentially really inflammatory. People might not like this. We might have another... The devs are going to be really careful about this and justify this perfectly because they're kind of doing the Bram thing again. It's nice to have some kind of chasm between the main character and a beloved side character, right? It's nice to see that and explore that and everything that comes from it. However, you've got to make it 100% watertight. Is it justified? And that was where they fell down with Bram, because they didn't treat him like a Norn and whatnot. Here, they're trying to treat Rytlock like a Blood Legion Char. That's two separate things they've touched on here that would justify why he wouldn't like this, based and rooted in his history as a Blood Legion member of the Char, right? Here, even talking about the Faraz. So that's kind of cool. This is weird to read as well. They're kind of talking about a scene that hasn't happened, because we have the cut to black. I talked about this a little bit with a recent release. It's a weird way to end the episode because it's like we've ended in the action to a degree. Usually there is some, however slight, sense of finality that allows us to then, have a breather. But here we're imagining a whole scene of our player character that we're not privy to without coming to a website, which is very, very interesting. I wonder, therefore, do you guys think that episode 6 will start right there in that branded room, picking up immediately from the black screen? I think that from a technical standpoint, the devs can do that with Living World, and I think that that's fine, and it works, especially for people who play all the releases in sequence years later, you know, when you can and are just going back to back to back. That would make no difference to them there. And if that is true, we are going to get this scene. Are we going to hear the commander say, "You have to trust me, Rytlock"? Are we going to see... Are we going to read up to the next release the backstory of the 3 characters, and then we'll see the actual scene? That might be kind of cool. Anyway, this was about loyalty, last of all. I don't know whether I really buy into this as being a big aspect of Rytlock. Maybe somewhere. I would have assumed, like many, that Rytlock follows us closely because of our successes, not necessarily just loyalty, but because we're a proven badass with a god and 2 elder dragons and a lich under our belt now, you know, at this point. That's what I would have thought. It's not baseless loyalty, is it? Anyway, this is about loyalty. Char are loyal to their warband, their brothers and sisters in arms. The bonds forged in battle are stronger than any bloodline. But in the Farah, we're also taught that losing warband mates will happen. For the greater good, victory above all, honor to the warband, glory to the high legions, acceptable losses, Ruinbringer calls them. Whoa! Okay, sure. Destiny's Edge, Dragon's Watch, for over a decade, they've been my warbands, my family. They've been loyal to me. I tried to be loyal to them. They put their faith in me to achieve victory above all. Even with acceptable losses, I didn't do enough. Kralkatorrik is in the mists. Soon, he'll either brand the whole world or swallow up the mists. So, we hunt him down and kill him. Simple, right? Okay, I got a million thoughts again. Number 1, I never mentioned this a second ago. So they're confirming Kralkatorrik escaped into the mists again here. You remember actually right as the patch came out, I speculated he might not be able to do that anymore. And that would serve as an opportunity for the devs to ease up on the adrenaline for episode 6 and, you know, just chill out a tiny bit. But I guess it will still, in a weird way, having him hiding in the mist is also a way of easing off the adrenaline, because we can assume he's doing a lot of damage, but we don't have to see the consequence of it. Anyway, so that's one small thing. I think I see where they're going here. They're talking about Rytlock's warband. Another long-standing mystery here. 2 big facets of Rytlock's character. Where did he get the sword originally, Sohothin, from? How did it come to be in his possession instead of buried under volcanic magma and whatever at the Fire Island chain? We saw a cutscene of the Scepter of Ore disappearing, but we never actually saw what happened to Sohothin. So, you know, that's been a mystery. The other one is what's going on even with his warband. It was talked a little bit about in Season 1 when Rox with the whole Tequatl thing wanted to join, and, you know, that was a bit of a thing for her. But we don't really get to meet them much. So, hold on, are we going to learn about that here in this story? Also, here, Ruinbringer. They're talking about Bangar Ruinbringer, the Imperator, I always forget which pronunciation, you guys don't freak out at me over, of the Blood Legion, who is extremely rarely mentioned in lore. They're bringing up this stuff to our mind. I think we could be looking at going there at some point. Acceptable losses as well. Isn't there something that rings true about that in the personal story? In any case, so he still wants to kill. This is very much like the Bram thing. Bram kind of went on his own way, just fueled out of adrenaline to kill a dragon with, you know, his own inability to grieve or whatever. I don't know if it's fair to say that Rytlock's grieving. I like to believe that a Blood Legion Char never grieves. Or if they do, it's not a story I care for the writers to explore. But, you know, it could be a similar thing. And when I say that, I actually say that a bit pessimistically. Because if you look at the way they handled Bram going after Jormag, that didn't manifest into any cutscenes or anything visually evident at all. So, you know, and they even spent that whole prophecy of the tooth breaking and the legend of the tooth break. That was a huge plot point that they kind of used in service of that Bram story that we got nothing out of, really, it almost feels like. So I hope that whatever happens with Rytlock here, they can develop on in a really satisfying way, as opposed to the Bram thing. Anyway, simple, right? I could still be wrong. Maybe he doesn't go off on his own way. All right, he says, yeah, no, not really. Aurene was the only way to save Tyria. She was supposed to kill the Crystal Dragon, absorb his magic, and I don't know. It's not like we had better options. Every other plan ends with the annihilation of all existence. Even if we somehow did manage to end Kralkatorrik without her, all that magic inside him, from Zhaitan, Morgemoth, and Balthazar, the boom wouldn't be pretty. All my friends, my family, they're all going to die in this doomed world because I'm a failure. Always have been. Okay, he's getting a bit broody for my liking here. I'm wondering if this is going to be some backstory, though, about some failure and why he left his warband. Why is Balthazar an option here? It's nice to hear people talking about Zhaitan. Also, I'll note as well, one story that the devs never went with, that I think could have been quite easily, especially considering the real-world comparisons, though maybe they want to ease off on that. They only have to very broadly go near real-world events and people start accusing them of having agendas and stuff. But one story that would have been so easy to do at this point is denying the inevitability of the annihilation of all existence as a result of the Elder Dragons dying. You know, I've proposed several times over the past 2 years that we should have, ever since Flashpoint really, had almost a conflicted scene between us and Almora and the forces behind the pact, Gix and whatnot, where essentially they say, and Logan too as leader of the pact as it became since Lake Doric, where they're essentially saying, look, we want to fight the dragons. You're telling us not to, but all we've got is your word. You know, there would be deniers of this, right? Just like we have climate change deniers in the real world with their invested interest in the industries that they're a party to, right? I think that you would have that, and that could have been an easy thing for the devs to have talked about. But here, everyone 100% believes that it's the end of existence. I'm not sure how much evidence they've got, since this is newfound uncharted territory for all involved. Even when you bring the ancient races in, like the Massat and the Forgotten and stuff, even they never managed to get as far as we got. So it is, you know, bold new frontiers here. Anyway, I want to click Balthazar and see what happens. Whoa! Okay, so... Oh, hold on! I see what they're doing! So wait, we got to choose Balthazar. We get the answer to the sword mystery? And or I could click the other one and we'd get the answer to his warband mystery? Oh god, okay, so we picked Sohothin. Is that your sword? Wow, okay, the stranger's voice carried far in the mists. It was deep, powerful. Maybe in life he'd been some great lord, crossed someone he shouldn't have, wound up, chained in these wastelands. Didn't matter to me. My eyes were on the blade buried deep in the stone, its flame long extinguished. My goal, finally in sight after how long it had been? Time strange in the mists. I only ask, the stranger said, because it looks like Sohothin's lost its spark. I stopped. Or maybe just my heart did. How did you know its name? So this is, okay, for the first bit of this, I thought we were meeting someone totally new. Now I believe that this is a part of him meeting Balthazar in the Mists that wasn't explicitly shown to us in the Path of Fire cutscene after Vlasta died. So we're getting more of him in the Mists, which was one of the big problems with POF, if you guys remember. I think I'm not alone in feeling that I wanted more of an expansion on that. Rest in peace to MXM, by the way, which was a game that kind of told Rytlocks' adventures in the Mists. Yeah, seriously. Okay, so how do you know its name? The stranger smiled. People are strange in the mists, too. Who doesn't know of Sohothin, he asked. Legendary blade of fire and war, taken up by a Char. Word travels around, I guess. He offered to reignite it. I should have known. That was the moment I should have known. Idiot. But it was also the moment I realized I could get Sohothin back. I'd wandered the mist for what felt like a lifetime, ancient battles repeating for eternity, and now there was a chance to take back the light. My light. I didn't ask who he was or why he was chained up. I just wanted my life back. You can reignite it. Okay, it's definitely the Balthazar scene. This is amazing. They're really making out like this was a huge part of Rytlocks' life and existence. It reminds me of a little bit of Star Trek Next Generation, with what happened to Captain Picard when he basically lives a whole life, you know, and then comes back and everything's back to normal, but essentially he would have aged so much. I wonder how much Rytlock aged in there, but then also didn't because of the mists. I love this line that people are weird in the mists too. It's an interesting sense that I won't go off into a massive discussion here, but we've been talking about how the devs are playing with the stakes. You know, showing off the mist a lot. You've got Snaff coming out of the mist. You've got air coming out of the mist. You've got Glint coming out of the mist, even Gwen, even in Guild Wars 1 when we got to speak to Sarah, Gwen's mother, it almost felt like, who cares if you die and go to the mist? Everything's the same. People are just welcome to have free will and chat and be themselves. It's just now you're in a ghostly form and in a different place. And, you know, we can talk about how people change based on where they are, you know, look at the themes of a game like Soma. But my point is that if people are... subtly saying people are strange in the mist is to suggest maybe not is all as it seems. Maybe there is something to fear. Maybe things aren't exactly right in the mist and people are kind of off. And even when we see these characters in recent storylines, there's still like some threat. Anyway, that's what I think when I read a line like that. So yeah, he's definitely still you know, upset with himself. You can reignite it. The stranger raised his arm and the flame within Sohothin sparked, piercing through the gloom of the mists. I should have noticed how easily his muscles ignored the weight of his chains. I should have noticed the hungry flicker of flame in his eyes. But how much did I really see? How much do I just wish I'd seen? Sparks and cinders filled the air as I wrenched the blade from the stone. Its heat felt familiar. Now I was smiling too. With Sohothin, everything always seemed just a little easier. That blade is truly a marvel, the stranger said. I see how you look at it. You appreciate how special it is. I told him it was good at his job, but I won't lie. Part of me was vindicated. The stranger had no answer except to raise both his arms and stretch out his chains. Then I freed him. This is interesting. So now the story we're reading here overlaps with the Path of Fire cutscene, but gives more detail. Which is a curious thought. You might say, why doesn't the cutscene do it in full the first time? Obviously, the story wasn't written out as much as it is now. But, you know, you got the other side of it, which is that cutscene we see is simply a visual representation of Rytlocks' recollection of the events. And some details may not have slipped through. Not in dishonesty, but... you know, there were lots of things going on in his mind at that time, and how much information does the commander really know? Here we're kind of in his deepest, innermost thoughts, and all those extra pieces of information come out. We get to hear a little bit more of their conversation and stuff that the cutscene doesn't show. And then I freed him. It was my fault. Everything that came after. All because I wanted that damn sword back. I told myself it was to free Ascalon of its curse, but that excuse didn't last long. I wanted Sohothin because it was mine, because I earned it. Or, at least... I paid for it. When the stranger, when Balthazar, saw how I looked at it, could he see what I thought of myself without it? After I cut him loose, he went on to Alona, killed Vlast, murdered the commander, struck a bargain with Joko, nearly destroyed the world. All because I wanted that sword back. Okay, there's a ton to think about here. First of all, maybe, yeah, it is very self-interested. I adore how this is making me think of Living World Season 2. A lot of you guys might have that moment where you're like, oh, this is when the story got good. For me, I think one of the main releases where I thought, wow, Living World can do big things, was that Season 2 release where right before it came out, it suddenly seemed like the ghosts of Ascalon were going to leave. And they were like, oh, they've got a cure for the ghosts of Ascalon. And there was a whole patch around getting rid of the ghosts of Ascalon. And it was like, whoa, they're doing this in an episode? This is big. And then, of course, the ritual fails and Rytlock goes missing. And then that was actually a big mystery rolling into Heart of Thorns and stuff. People kind of forget. But that's when I think things started getting a lot more intense, right? And we had the Omad's machine cutscene and stuff. That's, I think, when people really started sitting up. So it's really nice to look back at that moment, which was kind of the flashpoint, I think, for the story to really start snowballing somewhere. And it's really good in the Path of Fire days, because this is all Path of Fire's duty to answer these things, I think. And we see a little bit more of how selfish he was. Now, what is this? He earned the sword or paid for it? Hello? Originally? Oh, we've got to get this answer, right? And then this is really nice at the bottom here as well, though the order is very strange. And I think the devs have missed something out. Obviously, he struck his bargain. He went to Alona first. Then he struck the bargain with Joko. Then he killed Vlast. Then he murdered the commander. And, you know, you could say that he nearly destroyed the world, obviously. Particularly at Joko's Sky Gardens. What I think this is missing... And I don't say it's bad because it's out of order. But what I do say is missing is they should have had impersonated Lazarus on there. Probably is the most concise way. because what they've done is kind of skip over all of Season 3. And I think it's a mistake to skip over all of Season 3. Most players and shallow-thinking lore enthusiasts will skip over Season 3 when they think about the Balthazar story, because it's easy to forget that that was Balthazar. But it was Balthazar, and a big part of his story. And I'm a bit disappointed that the devs, or the writer of this particularly, didn't think to go that far. Because that's what he did immediately after getting out of the mist. It was the stuff at Bloodstone Fen and whatnot, right? Which is still murky and needs a little bit more light on it, but hey. Alright, all because I wanted that sword back. Rytlocks, Rytlocks, Rytlocks. That damned chorus of voices all around me again. Open palms shoving me to the ground. Clawed feet kicking me while I'm down. And somewhere behind it all is my voice. Small, alone, screaming for them to stop. They don't. Not until I wake up. I knew I'd get back at them someday. Me and my friends, we'd make them all stop. We'd hurt them, like they'd hurt us. I became the leader of my warband, training every day, slaughtering countless enemies. A legend among the Char. They'd knock me down, but I'd always stand back up. I never dream about that. Why can't I ever dream about that? I was the runt of the litter. I'd always been the runt of the litter. No matter how many enemies I tore apart, no matter how many elder dragons I killed, even if I was Karner, I'd always be Rytlocks. I couldn't change that. All I could do was stand back up after they pushed me down. But even when I silenced those voices for good, I never got them out of my head or my nightmares. Not until I found Sohothin. Interesting. Haven't they kind of conflicted themselves here a little bit? Because he found Sohothin and then the nightmares stop. And yet here he's saying he knows in his heart, even with all of his accomplishments, killing elder dragons and stuff, these nightmares won't go away. So does that mean while he was in the mists, he was a particularly troubled time? Because, I mean, he had it, but it was depowered, right? Anyway, so not until I found Sohothin. Are we going to get the detail? So I'm going a bit quicker here because I really want this information. Also, I've given you guys so much discussion and I didn't realize how long this story would be. I'm really impressed at the length of it so far. I'd always thought it was more of an Ash Legion job. Infiltrate the Flame Legion and sabotage Geheran Balefire's operation from the inside. Normally, that would mean sending an envoy to the Black Citadel to set up a joint operation, but Imperator Ruinbringer didn't trust Ash Legion. Still doesn't. Doesn't trust anyone, really. He sent just the two of us, me and Kreesha. She was just like one of those knives made out of Canthan porcelain, flawless and sharp enough to cut you to pieces. Kree was perfect for the job, Ruinbringer said. What he meant was, she was female. Balefire wouldn't see it coming, wouldn't suspect her of being a Blood Legion warrior in disguise. He was right, burn him. Ruinbringer usually is. Getting into the garrison was easy. Maybe the job itself would have been too, if I didn't spend most of my time just trying to avoid killing everyone I met. That was hard. Kreesha was better. Poisoned food, stole plans, swapped orders. Flame Legion didn't suspect a thing. Then we got some news. Something big going through the ranks. The Flame Legion had found something and was bringing it to our garrison. Something incredible. They'd found Sohothin. Oh, wow, we're getting it here. Oh, my lords. So this was obviously making me think about the dungeon storyline and how Rytlocks goes back there. None of this gets into that story, but the story mode dungeons, frankly, you know, didn't have much time to really get into these kinds of things. But wow, so that was not his first time to the Citadel. Incredible. This character as well, I don't recognize Kreesha. She must die before the game begins. I guess we'll see in a second. Also, poisoned food, stole plans, swapped orders. You know what this makes me think of? Brisbane Wildlands, where you infiltrate the bandits. And these are like the 3 things you can do as a part of the Heart Quest. It's weird to think that what are actually quite large stories in lore, we kind of casually do in bite-sized increments 20 times a day when we log in, because we're doing different hearts as we go through leveling up. But wow, okay, so they'd found, so the Flame Legion find it on the Fire Island chain and bring it to Hrangma, which is their volcano in you know, the Flame Citadel, where that's based. Do we get the details of why they were on the Fire Island chain then? I tried to learn more, but sneaking around, gathering intelligence, not exactly my strong suit. Here's what the two of us figured out. The Flame Legion sent some troops to the Ring of Fire to look for an ancient relic that belonged to a human prince, Rurik. Was supposed to have been a gift from their god of war, Balthazar. When we heard that the blade was leaving our garrison for Fireheart Rise, to be delivered to Imperator Balefire himself. Well, I couldn't let that happen. Interesting. So, I mean, that's the answer. Do I want more clarifying details there? What tipped them off that Sohothin was there? Actually, I think that that's fine, to be honest. It's not difficult to imagine how the Flame Legion would come across that information. Humans would have known via the hero of Guild Wars 1, I would presume, or Devon or Aiden and co, what happened with Rurik. I mean, Rurik's zombification is not talked about anywhere ever, but I have to assume that at least in some human circles over the 250-year gap, that information survived. And is it really that important that we find out where the Flame Legion got that nugget to then tip them off to go to the Ring of Fire? I don't think so. But the thought that the Flame Legion were like above Draconis Mons, essentially, is a wonderful thought. And I would still love to return to the Ring of Fire Islands at some point. But okay. And so Rytlock, being Rytlock, attacks and claims it en route. Of course, I couldn't just steal it. I had to tell my warband mate what I was planning. Problem was, Cray was doing too good a job to leave it all behind. When I told her what I was going to do, she told me I'd get myself killed. Probably put her at risk too. If I got caught, it wouldn't take them long to figure out which Imperator we really answered to. But I was young. I couldn't let Balefire get his claws on Sohothin, and my head was full of... I was young. We were young. I did what I thought I had to. I killed the guards protecting Sohothin and claimed it for myself. Begged Krisha to come with me. Maybe she even considered it. I'll never know, because she didn't. She stabbed me in the leg with a paring knife to slow me down and sounded the alarm. Later, she told Ruinbringer she was just trying to make it look good. Can't say I appreciated it at the time, even if it worked. She kept up the act for years after I got away. I think about her sometimes. Her fine lines and sharp edges. The scar on my leg reminds me of what I did. Still makes me wonder if Kree was one of those acceptable losses our teachers in the Faral like to talk about so much. But in the end, I had Sohothin. That's what mattered. Wow, okay, so they're undercover amongst the Flame Legion. He blows his cover in order to do a preemptive strike and get the blade. She, though, wants to remain an operative. This is weird thinking of Blood Legion operatives, but it's kind of tantalizing in a way. I really like it. So Rytlock's leaving, and in order for her to continue pretending to be Flame Legion, and in order for her enemies to still buy her alliances with them, she has to make it look good, like she actually tried to stop Rytlock. So she stabs him in the leg, she sounds the alarm, he gets away nonetheless. I love how violent and gory it is. You guys might think, oh, that's totally unbelievable, but they're Char, man, and they're Blood Legion Char, and all you got to do is replay the personal story and see how ruthlessly they kill one another. This actually is quite tame in a sense, actually. So, have they just set up a love interest? I mean, look, he's thinking about her fine lines and sharp edges, a character that's still out there somewhere, perhaps waiting for him when he gets back to the Blood Legion homelands. I think that that's something they might be doing here, right? A love interest, maybe an antagonist for the future. In the end, I had Sohothin, and that's what mattered. So it seems they are skipping a beat here. I'm guessing they'll skip it, which is why Blood Legion don't claim it, and their Imperator doesn't claim it, or anyone else. Why does Rytlock get to keep it? I guess he was a hero amongst the Char to an extent. But, you know, it's a powerful freaking sword, particularly with how power crept it feels in POF. But maybe in Universe it wasn't that strong until Balthazar reignited it. Maybe when he reignited in the mist, he gave it and then some even more, which is why we see it so strong. Anyway, that's what mattered. He had the sword. Imperator Ruinbringer wasn't happy to see I'd blown my cover, but stealing Balefire's secret weapon, that improved his mood. Now that I was back with my stone warband, Ruinbringer decided to put us on the front lines of the next major attack, with me and Sohothin at the fore. Okay, so they do kind of answer it. He wanted the Flame Legion to see their precious artifact in the claws of the enemy. He wanted the Flame Legion to see their own cut down by its magic. He wanted the Flame Legion to fear the fire. And they did. Battle after battle, Sohothin cleaved through enemy lines. Their arrows, their blades, their magic. It all knocked me down, but I always got back up. My legend grew. My power grew. My warband grew distant. But that didn't matter to me. I had Sohothin and I was unstoppable. I won battle after battle, setting those Flame Legion zealots ablaze like dried kindling. Rytlock Brimstone was the most feared Char on the battlefield. My superiors tried to order me around, tried to push me down, but with Sohothin, Nobody would ever push me around again. My superiors didn't like that very much. Oh, wow, so look, here's the other answer. What happens with the warband? It's almost a boring but realistic, I guess, answer that he just had so many important and interesting duties that he sort of grew away from his warband. A story very similar to what the commander goes through if you're a Char. Essentially, you build this warband and then you just kind of leave because you have other duties and things going on. Now, the real reason that you don't get to have your warband everywhere is because it would cost too much. You know, the development efforts, it would be too much to continue paying off on. But I wonder whether this sets up some kind of line of player dialogue should you happen to be a Char later, where we reconcile our lives with Rytlock, and we both note how we've grown distant from our warbands as we've taken on new duties. But okay, so my superiors didn't like that very much. I should have you executed, you know that? I remember the way Ruinbringer's eyes shone and his teeth flashed in that dimly lit chamber at the Blood Citadel. He claimed that I didn't follow orders, that I put my fellow Char at risk, that I thought I was better than he was. I told him I had opinions about my orders. On the battlefield, he sneered. That's a bad place to have opinions. The next words out of my mouth were a mistake. Only if we lose, I said. I've yet to fight a losing battle. Ruinbringer rose from his throne. I tried to stand taller, dignified. Well, you're in one right now. I gritted my teeth. I knew what was coming next. Or at least I thought I did. Oh man, this is cool! What a scene! This is the first scene we've ever heard about in the Blood Citadel throne room or whatever. And that's a badass, like, a beautiful thing representing Blood Legion right there. Or at least I thought I did. You'll not become a Gladium, Ruinbringer said. You're being promoted. I was confused, but told him I was honoured. That was a mistake too. Ruinbringer showed me a heavy parchment, folded, sealed with wax. You'll be going on a little tour of the legions, he continued. Maybe your motivational presence will deliver them that same victories you've brought us. Just execute me. The other legions? They didn't fight like blood. Iron cowers behind their machines. Ash skulks around in the shadows. But there was no reasoning with him. Ruinbringer enjoyed the thought of me being miserable more than he enjoyed winning. All my victories, all the blood I'd spilled in my legion's name, in that moment, it meant nothing. I never thought I'd feel that impotent again. Oh, come on, this is a bit melodramatic, to be honest. Oh, I'm on an assignment somewhere not perfectly ideal. I'm not sure I buy any drama in this. But they're setting up, obviously, the start of Edge of Destiny, I guess. I was there, in the Crystal Desert. The sands were glass. I looked right. Glint's corpse. I looked left. Her sanctuary. Just a blasted ruin. And in front of me, Snaff. What was left of him. I could have done more to save the little Asura. If I hadn't been so fixed on killing the Crystal Dragon, I would have seen the branded swarming him. All the power of Sohothin, and Snaff was still torn apart right before my eyes. I blamed Logan, but... Oh, this is beautiful. Oh, man, I wish I could have every single one of you watching this video right now have read the novel recently. Because that scene where Snaff dies... It's quite gross on it. It's really good. It's lots of short, sharp little sentences about Snaff suddenly being wrenched into the real world and opening his eyes and just seeing monsters all over him, like ripping him to pieces and like foaming blood in his mouth and stuff as fangs crush into him and stuff. It's kind of nasty. And you don't really get a great moment where you see Rytlock realize the body's there. You kind of just see a lot of the fallout. Anyway, I blamed Logan, but it was my fault. And I'm just as powerless now as I was then. Couldn't keep Logan from leaving. Couldn't save Snaff. Couldn't save Destiny's Edge. Or Vlast. Or Aurene. Take away Sohothin and what am I? Who is Rytlock Brimstone without the legendary Fire Sword? Would I still be Tribune? Would I still be known throughout the High Legions? If I died and someone else took up the sword, could they do better? I looked around the ruins of Thunderhead Keep. At the commander. Kaith. Taimi. Bram, my allies, my friends, my family. But there was more. A thought, cowering deep in the back of my head. The cubs I never see. I'm just going to go on here. I don't have anything too profound on that one. So, wow, he's talking about being a parent? I sent them off to the Farai years ago. That's what we do. Wasn't supposed to be a part of their lives. But that always felt Wrong. My parents left me to struggle. The only way a runt survives in the Farah is to fight their own battles, tooth and claw. Still, I check on them once in a while, just to see how they're doing. Make sure they're staying out of trouble, and make sure nobody's given them any. I'm never gonna see them again. They'll look up at the sky as the mists disappear and everything ends. Will their warband be there to help them? Some are too young, haven't even left the Farah yet. They'll die never knowing if the camaraderie of a warband, of a family. And my eldest, my first, would he even bother to think of me as the world comes apart? That's when the tears came, finally. I realized why Kaith was crying, why the commander was crying. To them, Aureen wasn't just a dragon, she was their daughter. Alright, I'm pretty turned off by this. I don't like this. It feels weird to me, right? They're presenting a fantasy world with disparate races, and they're kind of headlining Char character to embody the Char spirit, right? Is Rytlock of the Blood Legion. And I feel odd about them kind of second guessing some of the philosophies of their fantasy race as not being good. Obviously, we as humans and people in the real world think that it's kind of crazy to abandon your kids, but the fantasy of this is that they have a different culture. Like, they should feel free to celebrate that, not write in some story where they kind of weirdly backtrack. I don't know, this just doesn't feel like Rytlock to me. I like the idea that he's a father and we just kind of didn't know. And we kind of already went through this with Air and Bram, for what it's worth. Now they've set on the table this idea that we'll see, like, Rytlock's cubs and stuff. But something about the way they've described all of this is icky to me. What, Rytlock crying about the kids he never sees? Because all of a sudden he has an extremely human perspective. Because, you know, us in the real world would find this somewhat reprehensible, probably. I don't know about this right now. So he starts crying about his kids. I mean, they're Char. He's a Char. He has this little confidence. Oh, God. Alright, so she was their daughter. 11 years ago, I stood in the Crystal Desert and saw how powerless I really was. Even with Sohothin, everything fell apart. Kralkatorrik escaped. My friends either died or abandoned me. My superiors call it acceptable losses. My whole life, I was told that my warband was my family and the High Legions were absolute. Everything I did, every victory I won, it was for them. Everything else I had to sacrifice was an acceptable loss. But they're not acceptable. Not when I keep losing people I care about. My comrades, my friends, my cubs. I'd never let it happen. Burn the High Legions. Burn them all to the ground. I barely know my cubs. But if Kralkatorrik threatened one of them, I'd sacrifice my damn sword in a heartbeat. I'd throw myself in front of them. I'd die for them. Yeah, I guess I get it now. Rytlock? Logan. His voice shakes me back to the present. Saw you pacing around. I had been, all over Thunderhead Keep. Now I'm crouched on a piece of stonework, away from the others, hiding in the shadows. Thought I'd be difficult to spot. Guess I was wrong. Just thinking. Right. I see Logan hefting something out of the corner of my eye. You left this by Aureen's... near Aureen. It's Sohothin. I can't remember leaving it anywhere, so I just turned to look at it, at Logan, trying to think of something to say. Nothing comes to mind until he lays the blade against the wall and turns to leave. Logan, Yes? He's waiting. Patient, I'll give him that. I don't know how long he stands there. Like some sort of siege. A friendly one. I glance at the sword. Didn't need it. Another silence. Longer. Come on, he says. Let's check the others. They need us. After everything, how can I argue with that? I start to leave, but Logan's hand is on my shoulder. Rytlock, your sword. It's more than a sword. I know that much. I decided long ago that Sohothin was more important than Kree, who I'd left behind. I decided it was more important to have Sohothin than a family by my side. But I could kill every damn thing in the whole world. I could rule all 4 legions as the next Khan-Er, and I'd never be happy. I'd never be worth it. I couldn't fix the world. I couldn't even fix me. So I keep walking. Don't need it, I say again. It's just a sword. It'll be here when I get back. Logan looks suspicious. You sure? Even with Sohothin, I'll never be as strong as I need to be. But I'm not powerless either. Not while I have them, my warband, my family. Not while I can still fight for them. Yeah, it'll be alright. And then we have a full-sized image and an illustration by, again, Jerome. So there you go. Now, that branch in the dialogue earlier, I have just checked in the video. It doesn't actually branch, you know, when we had the choice. It's all the one story. It just, you know, you can click whichever link you like to progress in that one moment, I guess. So, yeah, I guess the impulse of the story in the end, I was wrong. They're not setting up some contrived, oh, Rytlock doesn't like us anymore. They actually did the opposite. They forged closer bonds between us and Rytlock. I feel like this is a little bit messy, though. The actual outcome of this is he's putting down the sword. But, I mean, it's an incredible artifact. And if his resolution now is a more stoic determinedness to defend the world and his cubs and all this other stuff, surely he would want that more. Or maybe pass it on to someone else would make sense. What I actually view this story as, the whole thing now read, I think that what it's doing, in truth, is it's feigning a bit of character development for Rytlock, but I don't really think he's changed in any real course or direction by the end of this. It's just given us a little bit more information about him. It's put to bed a couple of mysteries that, you know, people like me have been clamoring for years now. And also, I think it's made us think a little bit more about some aspects of this world we haven't for a long time, perhaps in service of reintroducing them as a full-fledged patch at some point. You know, we had that little mention of Cantha in there. We've got some mentions of the Blood Legion homelands there. And so, yeah, that's how I actually view this piece at this point. They might have something more dramatic to say with these other characters, but it's an interesting one in that they probably can't do anything too crazy because they'll have to double up on that deliverance in-game as well. Otherwise, you're in this horrible situation that I've decried several times in the past, which is you shouldn't have to read the website. You shouldn't have to be subscribed to Wood and Potatoes to enjoy the full story and get these pieces of information, you know? You might say, oh, it's easy, WP, you know, I'm a fan of the game, I'm a casual fan, and I saw this, and I read this, blah, blah, blah. You might say that, but you got to think about new players, and you got to think about people a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It becomes an increasing job to juggle and remember where everything is. There's no proper through line in-game to link people to this. If this does appear in-game somehow, I think that'd be amazing. If the game made use of its like hyperlinking to link people to this kind of stuff, it'd be quite good as well. We had a real problem with this in Season 1. But yeah, it's a nice story. I don't really think that I have much empathy or sympathy for Rytlock. It didn't really tug on my heartstrings, which I think it was trying to. Maybe my expectations for what Rytlock is and what the Char are and what they should be is totally off, and I think that's perfectly fair. If what really gets to you guys is the idea of this character crying about these children we've never seen, then that's cool, I guess, but I think that was a bit of a miss as far as my world's concerned. But I'm really excited about the extra stories as well now at this point. And I wonder when they'll do them. Do you think they're going to space them out until the next release? Oh, there's a ton of discussion. But this video's already gone on way, way, way too long. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks very much for sharing this with me, enjoying yourselves. I'd love to hear in the comments what you guys all think. And I'll be back for some more good stuff very soon. Cheers, guys.